Hello and welcome to Rediscovering Connection. Today's guest is Monika Jiang, and Monika was introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours, Claire Holt, at my former company, who really introduced us to the House of Beautiful Business. So we attended 1 year of the House of Beautiful Business, and this is kind of where Monika's journey, where I understand Monika's journey began. I'm sure it goes way back before that. And then since then, Monika has really been delving into the topic of loneliness. And those of you who have followed my journey so far will know that loneliness has played a part in my journey, which probably comes to as a bit of a surprise to many of my friends, family, connections who know me as a very social human being, who've always kind of had big groups of friends around the world. I do have a habit of moving, of creating and kind of leaving pockets of friends, which I'm still getting under the skin of. I did do a talk at Royal Roads University last year, which really dissected this a bit more and help people to understand my journey of loneliness, moving to a new country during lockdown. I'm really feeling that even though I have many friends and family in my life, at that time, it didn't feel like any of them were in my life, as though I was kind of a passive spectator in their lives. If I chose to go onto social media, it didn't help me to feel connected. And that's really where I'm starting to get to in my journey with my personal inner work, and also helping clients and organizations to really look after their social and digital health through education, tools and strategies to help us feel more authentically connected, whether that is in person or whether that is connecting with a team member from afar. So welcome, Monika. I'm so glad to have you here. I have attended one of your digital events, which was really nourishing. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I really, appreciate it, and it's a joy to be here with you. When you just were sharing about, this part of your life where you had this, and I think we all have an intimate relationship in a way with loneliness, I really resonated because I have also felt lonely despite of having, despite of being a social person, of having wonderful people in my life. So I think modern loneliness also comes often in a paradox, almost like it hides very well and it shows up in very different ways and nuances often, that doesn't necessarily go along with this, say, cliche idea, or stereotypical idea of, oh, this one person who's like physically alone, detached, isolated, has no friends or whatever. Although, of course, that also exists, but it's more like this abundance of connections. You mentioned social media, all of that. And to bridge over to my time at the house, I was responsible there for the community and for the curation of the content. So I was lucky to be the person who, over the years, I was there for 5 years, really building the community from when it was just just a conference. It was just beginning to become something. And so I was lucky to be connected with a lot of our members and, spend time with them, get to know many of them. Now it's a global network of like 30,000 or more members all around the world. And that in a way showed me that many of them had the sense of, oh, here I don't feel, or I recognize that I'm not alone, right? That I don't feel so alone in what I'm trying to pursue, whether that is in business, trying to do something else, trying to do something unconventional, right? Something out of the business norm, or on a very personal level. So I just got really curious to see, like, okay, there seems to be a much deeper reason why people are so attracted to the house, connection, community, this sense of intimate connections, but then also being part of something greater. Like it's almost like this existential loneliness. And that just, led me into following this curiosity, as my chapter at the house was ending, because I've sensed like there's something else, there's something new for me to explore. And then I dove into loneliness, both sort of, through my own experience, partly and probably subconsciously, to be honest, at that time, through the house and through the community work, wanting to understand what is beneath that desire, and then also seeing our societies drifting apart, more and more. And especially in Europe, where I'm based, in the last few years, there's been such a rise in right wing and far right populism, and anti-democratic movements, and there seems to be a resonance, right? And there seems to be a lot of people who feel neglected and abandoned, and not part, and longing for something too, which then gets responded by in an ugly way, of course, in a non-human way, in many ways, I think, by populist movements who are very good at creating belonging, in that sense.
Mm.
So yeah.
Someone that's just come onto my radar is a guy named Robert Putnam. I don't know if you've heard of
Hmm.
him. He wrote
Yes.
the book called Bowling Alone
Yes.
decades ago, and his whole thing was about join clubs, join communities, and how people are less and less joiners. So we're not joining clubs, we're not. So what people are feeling alone, but it's like the impetus is on us. Like, it's for us to take the initiative and to understand and to realize that our loneliness is in our control a lot of the time.
Mm.
And if only we look out to see what opportunities and initiatives are out there that speak to us. And
Mm.
I think for a lot of us, work just takes over our lives, right? And they were
Yes.
like I've struggled to find the balance between sharing my personal or my professional life on social media, and that gives me a lot of social media anxiety, particularly in my personal platforms. Like, I feel quite comfortable sharing professionally on LinkedIn, but I struggle to know what to share and to feel comfortable and safe sharing on my personal channels about my personal life. So, and I just think in that respect, my professional life just always does take
Mm.
priority a lot of the time in terms of what I'm willing to share with my wider social connections, which is really why I've chosen to bring my social connections and relationships in. So I'm really focused on quality over quantity.
Mm.
Is there
Yeah, I
anything in
think
that Mhm.
absolutely. I think, you said it. I think you said, safety, like feeling safe. And I would presume that, when, at least it's the case for me as well, when I share something about my work and with my professional network, that feels much more, it feels close but distant, feels much more safe, because I'm Monika, the person who's exploring loneliness and community. That's not the whole of me. But if I would want to share something truly intimate and personal, there's also this question of like, why and with whom, and I make myself much more vulnerable. I make myself much more open, to be perhaps judged by the people that I actually care about, that I actually love, right? So I think that is what I hear in what you were just sharing.
Mm. And I wonder, I know that you've recently started on Substack, and I'm
Hmm.
like just preparing to launch one myself. And that, just the idea of that is feeling somewhat vulnerable, because I know that when I do launch eventually, then it will be the more personal and authentic version of me that
Mm.
is going to be shared. Like, I have notebooks brimming with stuff that I don't share anywhere at all, because I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing it on LinkedIn. I wouldn't feel
Mm.
comfortable sharing it on Facebook. And it's like, what is this for? Am I saving it for a book? Or do I just need to release when it is actually most alive for me? So how has that
Mm.
journey felt for you on Substack?
Yeah, I think, well, I guess, there's so much to be said about, social media or media, digital media in general, how that is both helpful, but then also often detrimental to our desire to want to connect and to our well-being overall. Like this desire to like share or not and for whom. But for me, I mean, it was just like the first things when I when I left the house, I took a few months for nothing. I really plunged into the unknown. At that time, I really had no idea. I had an inkling of maybe there is something with this loneliness topic, but no real idea of where that could go. So, and that was a really important time for me just to enjoy this transition and honor the time that I had with the house, and then also let that sink before I'm jumping into the next thing, right? So the launch of the Substack, I remember was sort of a very, for me, a tender thing, but it always also was, it felt doable at that time. I was like, okay, it's it's a newsletter. Like I'm writing, and this is for me, this is research, and writing for me is thinking. So I'm basically just motivating myself to, think more and deeper about this topic. And if there are a few people who want to, read it along with me and who become curious as well, particularly about something that is so stigmatized and so often misunderstood, loneliness, then that's wonderful. And I think, what I hear in your sharing of wanting to maybe share something more personal is that that's one big learning that I have so far, and it's not been a long time, that it is so needed and so helpful for all of us actually to share more of these particularly intimate, personal things that we usually maybe keep to ourselves, whether they are more, difficult feelings or difficult experiences, or they're very positive ones, right? And everywhere on that spectrum, but it is just so, so needed that we are coming into connection through these shared experiences, that someone reads something of your Substack and says like, oh, I thought it was just me,
Mm.
or oh, that there's something that I can take just as an inspiration for today, or yeah, or just like these are beautiful words, like it's so poetic. It's like a piece of art. Like there's so many ways we can resonate with each other, that doesn't necessarily have to fulfill a specific um, measurable outcome or purpose,
Mm.
I think.
Yes. And you have been hosting some physical events recently in
Mm,
Berlin. Am I right in
yes.
thinking? So some that are open to
Um,
all, and did you do one just for guys?
for just for men, yes. That was the most recent ones. I did a first one in like a just the first one in Berlin in December last year. That was the very first one. Then I did one in Lisbon in March. And then last week one just for men together with a friend of mine. And now I'm gonna do one in Madrid as well in 2 weeks. Um, yes, and yeah, that one, the one for men was sort of more looking at sort of the disconnection of men from themselves and each other, and this idea of masculinity and how that is connected, yeah, to this
Mm.
disconnection or this sense of loneliness.
And how facilitated were these events? Kind of
Um,
lightly or fully facilitated?
Actually, pretty like half half, I would say. It was definitely carried by the group. So we had 32 men join. And I did this together with my friend Jindy, man, who's doing a lot of men's work, and he's also a leadership coach. And yeah, so together we sort of opened. It was so interesting because we opened this circle with just a few words, also with a grounding exercise, like some movement. Some of the men were looking at me like, for real, I have to now go tapping and like breathing and but most of them, they played along. They were, oh, this is actually fun. Great. Um, and then we opened the circle, and I basically just prompted them to say, okay, what are some, associations that you have with masculinity? If I say masculinity, what's popping up? And I thought, we would hear maybe one or two keywords just like here, there, and then launch into a conversation between Jindy and I. And then what happened was that there was so much energy already, and so much that wanted to be shared from the men, the participants, about, their personal relationship to this idea of masculinity is something that is like, a concept that they relate or not relate to so much. So there was a lot that wanted to be shared and talked about. So we just went with that, holding it, but going with it and having some conversations, some pointers that we wanted to touch on just to understand, what are we talking about here, and how is that also connected to some research. And then that was sort of the first part, really an open conversation discussion. And then the second part were these men's circles. So those were facilitated, but also lightly, in a way that it was really about the men sharing their stories. And the way that these men came into the space and left was, day and night almost, or sun and moon. It was really, really beautiful for me, particularly, to witness that. Because the second part with the men's circles, I was not part of. So it was really beautiful for me to, as a woman, as a woman, as a daughter, as a friend, as a partner, right? Like all of these dimensions, like as me, to witness that, and how much such a space is needed, actually, and for men exclusively. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, what a privilege to have been, like, you facilitated, but as a witness to that to that need and the feeling of that. I'm curious if any like connections were made by some of the attendees there, and if there's any, if it
Yes.
was, yeah, beautiful. I hosted a circle at my university last week, which was all about authentic connection in nature. And just the gratitude afterwards of people just saying, I really needed this space today.
Yeah.
Thank you. And people really feeling seen and heard in circle. There's just something magical about that process. So I applaud you for creating that space and the bravery of going out there to say, I'm learning, but I know that this is needed. And then look at the reception, like 32 guys. And how about your open sessions for men and women? Have they been quite well attended also?
Yeah, so far I've always kept it with 30. And now I'm actually interested, because partly because of that experience with a men's gathering, to maybe try smaller groups, because I think the quality, and you will probably know this, like the quality, of course, of conversation and exchange, it does change if you have
Right.
maybe 15 or 20 instead of, because it was a lot. It was just, wow, there was just a lot, and it almost felt like, you know, it was not enough. I mean, it's never enough with these kinds of things, but I think that's one of the few things that I will definitely, do differently or explore. But
Yeah.
thank you for acknowledging it. And I think it just speaks really to the need for connection, more than anything else, amongst each other. And I think there is something particularly precious about men connecting with each other, not through sports, not through, going to the pub and hanging out there, not these kinds of activities. I mean, activities are great, but not necessarily those spaces where, not to say that they're wrong, they're needed and they're great, but where there's already a social code, right, on how to be there, and in bigger groups, and you're like, okay, this is like going out and like that kind of shit, but in a more, yeah, focused way where you can show up. And of course, I think the one of the advantages, I guess, yeah, in those spaces is that people don't know each other. So there is almost this, right? We said like, okay, we will not share details that can be attributed to someone outside of this space. It's like just here, please honor that. And they didn't know each other, so often it is easier, paradoxically, to share something more intimate with a stranger in those spaces. Yeah.
And in our circle last week, it was majority women. There was one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we would go round in circle, and sometimes we would kind of popcorn it to allow people to just speak when they felt the impulse to. And he was definitely one of them that spoke last. And it was almost like it
Mm.
had to sink in that, oh, we're going there. And almost like it took a while for that that opening to even make the words accessible in terms of what he was actually feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and also, I guess, and I could imagine, right, in the presence of many other very articulate, I'm assuming all of these things, women, to be like, okay, what am I going to say now? I want to speak my truth, but like, is it that or is it this? So I again, just assuming how he might have felt, but I could imagine that might have been the case as well. And there is just on this topic, not this observation, there's research done primarily by a woman called Niobe Way, and she's been studying boys and young men in particular over decades now, and across the world. She's based in the US, but like across the world. And what she found was that boys around the age of 7 or 8-ish, I think, before that or during that age, they have very close relationships and friendships, like with other boys in particular. But then something shifts during their very early adolescence, where they get this idea that, um, it's not manly enough to be intimate with another boy in particular, right? Like maybe touching each other now in this way, like hugging each other or holding, that's weird. Like girls maybe do that, we shouldn't be doing that. And like all of these cliches about like boys don't cry, men don't talk about their feelings, like all of that is very much interwoven in at least the most Western industrialized nations and cultures, right? It's like this idea that yes, there is a certain way how a boy is growing up to be a man, right? To be self-sufficient, to be strong, to like be composed. How dare you like cry and like make a drama scene? Like, no, you're not a girl, you're not a woman. Another cliche. But there's something that happens. It gets so suppressed and robs them almost, right, of this very natural human instinct of wanting to be emotionally intimate, wanting to connect, right, wanting to hug each other, wanting to be close. So I think when you shared about this participant of yours in your circle, and that you felt like maybe there was a little bit of hesitation or it had to sink in, um, there's many reasons for that, and I'm just mentioning this to say like there's so much depth in the reasons and the whys of how men have been socialized, or boys, men, um, and how that plays out in our society right now, that is going through so much waking up, like a sense of like transformation, right? And predominantly also through feminist movement and so forth. Not that we're yet there yet, but um, I have a lot of newfound compassion, I would say personally, for boys and men in this regard in particular. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a 5-year-old boy, so it's
Oh,
actually really valuable to know for me to be able to support him in the years to come.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend you, if you have not seen it, it's a movie called Close. It's a Belgian movie, and it's also based on the research that I mentioned. And it's a very heavy movie. but it's a beautiful one that depicts this inner confusion almost at such a young age. Like I get goosebumps because it's seeing that and reading the research is one thing, but like seeing it in a movie and like through personal stories, and the director also who spoke about this is like very it's concerning in a way, right? It's like, wow, and now this movie is coming out, after so many years. So anyway, I recommend it to you because I think it might be inspiring in a way, even though it's a heavy one. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful one.
Thank you. And much of my work leans on the research of Dr. Robin Dunbar in terms of understanding the numbers of people that actually really impact our health and happiness. And looking at that, the numbers are small. And I do think as a parent, this is going to really help me to be a good mum in terms of encouraging my children to have a small number of close friends and stop trying to be popular to everybody, because that does not necessarily lead to happiness.
Mm.
I wonder if kind of numbers has come up for you in any of the work that you've done, in terms of seeing how people's social needs are and if they're being satisfied in their physical life or in their digital life, perhaps.
Mm. Yeah, it's such an important aspect, and I think that's where social media comes in again, right? It's this this sense that, I have hundreds, maybe thousands of followers, but I have no one to call when I'm feeling sad, right? Or if I'm feeling I want to share something really, really important. So that's sort of the modern notion of this weird modern loneliness, right? That has nothing to do necessarily um, with lack of connections, because we are so hyper connected in a way, but the quality of it, and as you say, sort of the number, I think does absolutely play a role. And the trends, like at least the numbers that are coming out of the US, that I know of, because in Europe there's also similar statistics but different ones. The numbers are really declining in terms of friendships, and close friendships in particular, which is very concerning. But then on the other hand, you have sort of the social media phenomenon, right? It's like everybody's your friend now. I'm following an influencer, and like they share their morning routine, and like this is where I go to for lunch, and you're like, oh, that's my friend, but it's not that I would say it like this, but it feels like that. And of course, when they do research and like compare, right, how people feel actually after social media interactions, the results are very mixed, because, and maybe you resonate with this, I do for sure, is that sometimes I go on social media and I scroll and I'm like, yeah, I love to see what my friend there and there, or that person is doing, right now on the other side of the world. That's cool. I feel connected in a way, right? Or I have this new app that I'm testing actually, where you check in on how you feel today. You do that 3 times or so a day. It's just like it's a small check-in. It's like literally 1 minute on the app, but not even. Just like, this is how I feel today, and you can check how your friends feel, which is interesting and nice, because it's actually it's a Canadian uh, app or a company startup. It's called Upbeing, and they really look at the social aspect of well-being. Anyway, so that's nice, I'm like, oh, that's cool. But then often, of course, I go on social media and I scroll, and I'm like, what have I been actually looking at? Like, I don't even remember. I'm just in this doom scroll, and I don't feel connected. I feel disconnected. I feel jealous. Because I'm seeing this and I'm seeing that, and I feel like I'm left out. And like, why didn't they ask me to come? All of these things. So back to your question of, quality versus quantity, um, I think absolutely, in terms of close relationships or close friendships, it is so, so important for us to at least have one person, right, that we can rely on, that we can trust to, that we can speak to, that we can call, and shift our perception a little bit of what it means to be in relationship, what it means to have true friendships. hosting in 2 weeks this event here in Madrid that is exactly about this. Like, what is actually true friendship in this age of everybody's your friend and no one? Um, and also, which is a little bit of a related question, but a slightly different one, what if we centered our lives more around our friends and around friendship rather than, say, the nuclear family? Um, so yes, I definitely resonate with this idea of keeping the circle small and tight, and then also being conscious of nurturing those relationships because we all have just a certain amount of energy to give. And even though love is expansive, right? Like you need energy to communicate, you need energy to connect, you need energy to visit someone if they're not in your same, place, and you need to take time, right? And that takes energy. So I personally can only have like a small circle of really, really close friends that I then tend to.
I so resonate. And with that energy that we have a finite supply of, energy and time, I think that for many people, they're spending that time and energy like crafting a post for social media. I've just had a big test because I've just gone on a huge road trip to Utah to see my
Mm.
brother. It was 1,600 kilometers each way with my two children and my partner. It was a
Oh my God.
huge deal, huge deal.
Yes.
And I did feel a bit of an impulse to share something on social media, but ultimately it was a really big deal. And I'm like, I only really want my close connections to even know that I'm going, because I don't want the whole world to be
Mm.
checking in and feel like I need to be updating everybody along the way of how it's going and everything. I wanted to be able to really sink into the enormousness of what we were doing and to be able to get there and be in full presence, not feeling like I need to answer to anybody at all. So I let about 12 or 15 people know that we were going on this trip. And then some of them did message me kind of on the way. And those that did, I
Mm.
kind of responded to. Those that didn't, I felt like I'd done my due diligence to let them know, and that was enough. And then I let let people know once we arrived home safely. Now I will share something on social media. I will. I'm excited. Like, we got some beautiful photos, but actually some of those photos I've sent to kind of a few like different family groups, and I've sent to individuals to go, wow, this was like such a nourishing trip. And now I feel called to actually go and print some photos and to
Mm.
send some in the post. And then I think, if I just share this on social media, if they then receive that in the mail, will that feel as personal? Will that feel as special? So I'm kind of doing a little bit of a test on myself to see
Mm.
if I can hold off and actually spend the month of May just personally sharing with my wider social connections. So going back to Robin Dunbar's numbers, so he says your brain's your brain has the capacity for about 150 people in the wider
Mm-hmm.
social spheres. So I've done my work to map my people, and mapping like the different clusters of people around it as well to make it feel a bit more manageable. So really what I'm wanting to do from this is to really take in all the learnings from my trip and that intimate connection that we had, the growth that me and my family had in the car. We were literally in the car for about 56 hours together over five
Incredible.
days.
Oh my gosh.
And share it intimately with people and invite people to kind of live experiences, whether it's
Mm.
in Zoom or in the metaverse, which I'm exploring, and offering, sharing, asking people, what do you want to ask me about it? It was a big deal.
Mm.
So this for me is my first real test to see how this feels to be sharing in this much more personalized way.
I love it. So first of all, congratulations on successfully making that huge trip and like coming back safely. And I, yeah, I find it very inspiring that you consciously are choosing to experiment a little bit and see like how does that feel, and question, how and with whom do I want to share what? Because you know that this happened, right? Your partner knows, your children knows, that you will forever have this memory because you have had this experience. But what the zeitgeist is sort of telling us these days, like if you can't prove that there was, a photo and a live stream and a video and like a second by second documentation of this is what I'm doing right now, by the way, then did it actually exist? Did it actually happen? So I think to resist that is a wonderful provocation, and really speaks to, coming back to coming back to the basics of like, let me just be here and like take this in, because we're doing this right now and this is how it feels, and like how, wonderful, or like how challenging also sometimes, or how whatever it was, right? But that's so precious, even more so I think these days, to keep that to yourself, and not feeling like you have no zero obligation to share, with like the wider like social media world at all, right? So
Thank you. And yeah, it
mm,
was definitely all the feels. It was all of the emotions. It was amazingly, stunningly, breathtakingly beautiful. And it was
mm,
anxiety ridden at times. The
mm.
pace of US cities on the roads is crazy. Yeah, that was heart leapt a
Wow.
few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was incredible. And I have had some feedback from a friend of mine that I don't share enough in terms of
Mm,
my personal life on social media. And I'm like, I guess my podcast in a way is probably a bit more of a personal touch. So but yeah, I save it. I save it for people
hmm.
that are in my circles. And maybe we don't need to bear all to the public all the time.
No, no. I mean, there's so much of it already. And I really feel that because I also, now that I've started my projects, I'm like, does this matter? Like, should I post this? Like, and then of course, at least again, I'm speaking just for myself. I'm getting into this cycle of like, how's the post performing? What time? Who are these people? And it's just like, oh my gosh, Monika, you don't like know, disconnect from that. But it's so hard because, of course, I'm spending a lot of time online and on social media, and it's so seductive and it's so smart and so manipulative to, tie your self worth through a stupid post, stupid likes on social media. It's just like, just post something and then don't look at it, but it just never happens for me. Um, but yeah, I think it's not an easy task.
And I think the social media algorithms are just kind of annoying because, like, if I go more than 2 weeks without posting a video on YouTube, for instance, like
Mm,
it's just the algorithm doesn't work for you. And I
yeah,
came off LinkedIn for a
no,
little bit and I've gone back on. It's like it just doesn't
mm-mm,
need the
mm-mm.
consistency for the algorithm to actually
Yeah,
be your friend and for them to actually
totally.
show your post. Which is why
Yes.
one of the big learnings that I love to share is when you're going on social media, like map
Mm,
the people, even just the 12 to 15 people who are really important to you. And when you're going on social media platforms, like look them up first,
mm,
because the likelihood is, even if they have shared, which half of them won't have, but you won't see it anyway. And then I
true.
do hear from some people, they're like, oh, didn't you see my post? And I'm like, well, no, I didn't, because I don't go on social media very much. I try and go on there as little as possible. But I'm getting better at, when I do go on, being a bit more intentional with who I look up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great prompt to say, like, map this, as you said, right? Map your people. Like, just don't look at your contact list, right? Don't look through your LinkedIn connections, just out of your, top of your mind. Who are the people? And map them. And I did that as well, just like in terms of understanding. who is there actually? And who, so what are the clusters, as you said, right? Like family and so forth. Um, and that would tell you a lot already, about like, and how do you resonate, then sit with that and say, how do you resonate? You feel like, I wish there were more people, or is it not more, it's different? Like, have you outgrown some of these friendships? Because that happens, right? It's like, I don't think it's like in any relationships, like, seems like we're not, on the same path, or like it seems like we have less to share now somehow. Neither of us is really invested into this relationship, which is just here because it's convenient and it's comfortable. No one wants to leave. So to make also the conscious choice of ending beautifully in a way, or as beautiful as possible, or honest, right? A friendship, I think that's really not easy. And usually it fades out somehow, you lose touch. But like to say to someone in a way without, making it a big drama, but just say, hey, I've noticed like we don't seem to be hanging out in this way anymore. Like I just wonder if you notice that as well. Like maybe it's because of this or that, or like this is what I'm interested in, to also honor the friendship and say we end it here, and then you create room or space again for new people, so that it balances it out as well of how many new people can you do you want to meet, or can you meet, so that it's not always this sense of, yeah, coming from a void, right? Of feeling like I'm actually happy, I'm actually okay, but I'm still gonna go to 25 networking, events or whatever. But that's also the culture, that we live in. It's like, why aren't you social? Be social, right? Like, no, I don't want to be social all the time. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that so resonates, all of that. And I just think, yeah, being intentional with how we're spending our time. And one of the checks that I
Mhm.
have is,
Mhm.
do I like the version of me that is alive when I'm in the presence of
Yeah.
others?
Yeah. Beautiful.
And I don't know what it is. And this sometimes I feel like it's unfair because I feel myself pulling away from certain individuals, and I can't put my finger on why. They've done absolutely nothing wrong, but for some reason that version of me that I love to be doesn't come out. And actually sometimes a version of me that I'm not wanting to be is
Mm.
present.
Hmm.
So in that respect, I mean, we're honoring ourselves by stepping back and acknowledging that, whether it's out loud or not.
Yes. No, absolutely. It reminds me, right, of this baseline of being, if you are not connected with yourself, you're not going to be able as much to connect meaningfully with others. It's just always this balance, right, that you have. So to check in with yourself and be like, is this me, and there's very many versions of me, but like this version of me, do I resonate, or is it one from the past? I actually don't want to be that person anymore. I thought like I left that part, just like that particular part, behind, and therefore can I go into connection with certain kinds of people because I intentionally want to, and vice versa, right? Like that the other person hopefully also feels the same way, right? And then you have something that you can nourish and that you want to nourish. So, yeah.
So I'd love to know. I understand, and this might be wrong, but I understand that you've kind of gone into this realm of loneliness and facilitating events with curiosity to really see what is wanting to emerge. Are
Mm.
you still in that phase, or do you feel like you started to get under the skin of what is wanting, and you've kind of got some vision of how that's going to play out in your future?
I think I'm still in the exploration phase, and I hope it never stops, to be very honest. Um, I hope I keep this sense of curiosity. I hope I keep this sense of um yeah, the way that, we just talked about the way that my heart feels and my soul feels when I am in this work of being with others, of holding space, of having people, and often strangers in a sense, or people that I've not spent a lot of time with, bare their soul in a way that is so moving to me, and again seems to be so needed, without me being having to say like, okay, now I'm a coach, I'm a therapist, I don't know what I mean, I am trying to create those spaces, but I hope I don't lose that, the sense. And at the same time, I I guess I'm becoming clear, that I would love to focus my work on what I'm doing, but just doing it better. So I think there is something very natural for me of, yeah, bringing people together and like creating this sense of community, but different from before, I guess. It feels more like small, direct, intimate. It feels there's a space around really cultivating and practicing connection skills. So compassion and empathy, active listening, and self-reflection, shifting perspective of me and other people, presence. Um, these kinds of skills or capacities really that are needed, I think, more so than ever. And I wanna, yes, step into that part as well. So both, yes, understanding and holding space for how loneliness wants to be shown or made visible. Again, because it is still a topic that is, yeah, tiptoed around often. And on the other hand, trying to say like, how can we nurture those capacities in order to be more able to reconnect with ourselves and others and the world, right, at large. Yeah.
Mm. And I love that, just the reconnect with self. That just so
Mm.
resonates, because I think through work and business of life, we can so easily lose our essence, ourselves, and then we find ourselves when we do get social, like what are we talking about? What is our conversation? It's like we really need to go inside to start remembering what lights us up. What do we want to be talking about? Not just allowing the narrative to just flow from our mouths on topics that we're
Mm.
not even interested in, or we don't actually have our own voice on. We may be just repeating somebody else's thoughts or words rather than going deep to understand what we think.
That's such an important point because it speaks to the fact that we've all, and it's ironic because I'm speaking now, that we've all become so used to speaking, to sharing, to posting, to broadcasting, to voicing, and to say like, okay, I'm on this side. I'm on this side. I'm not with those people. I'm on this side. Yes, I'm with the good ones, right? Like I'm with the ones that are right. And I think this capacity to really listen, right, to the other person, but also to yourself, like really, really, really listen. Um, that is something that needs to be brought back in a way that needs to be nurtured, and that can lead to this sense of self-connection in a deeper way, and then connection to the other. Because ultimately we all want to be listened to, but the fact that we speak more and shout louder and more channels, more, 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 it's like, who is even listening to this? Like, are you still, and to pause and to say, like, I actually don't know. I don't have an answer to this. Or I actually notice right now I'm not in the conversation. I'm not present. I'm not here. I'm actually thinking about my lunch, or I'm like thinking about what else I have to do on my to-do list. I'm actually not here at all yet.
Yeah.
So that, and
And
then to
even
be able to ask better questions. Yeah.
and even asking questions of
Mm.
yourself. Like when you immediately think, oh, I don't have a thought on this topic. It's like, no. don't know should not be in our vocabulary. Don't know simply means you've not given yourself a chance to think about it. So ask yourself the questions and then allow the pause. And that pause might take you a whole hike, or that pause, it might not come instantly, but allow the pause. Allow yourself to be curious about how you do feel on a certain topic. And maybe that is the standard line, or maybe it's not. And be curious. Doesn't mean you need to tell everybody, but
Exactly.
getting a deeper knowing of self, like that's kind of why we're here, I think.
Yes, I think this contemplation, right? This idea of, yeah, let me sit with that. Right? Let me, go for a walk, as you said, or hike, or movement is always wonderful, I guess, and so helpful, right? Especially when we feel like overwhelmed or stuck. Just get your body moving and you'll be like, okay, maybe I'm just walking, just taking a walk, doesn't have to run, or and something might emerge, right? Or this thought might lead you to something else. And those are the really, really precious in between spaces where something's like, oh, what was that? Didn't know that that was here. So yeah.
And what I'm just feeling called to kind of leave with from my side is when I'd kind of gone deep and into curiosity about my feelings of loneliness, when I came out the other side of it, I really did feel that I had been missing myself. I had been lonely because I was missing a version of me that hadn't been alive for a while, and she was back, or she was returning. I think she's still returning. But I'm really feeling a lot closer in my connection with self. And I'd love to just put that to you as kind of our closing of this beautiful conversation. Like, have you had any epiphanies through your journey and being really beautifully open and vocal about your experience? What is something helped you? Have you had an epiphany that's really been life-changing for your journey?
I think it's that. I've never articulated it like this, but I think it was that for me as well. This one moment a few years ago when I just realized that I had been so occupied with work, back to the work topic, and this idea and this mission that I was so passionate about, and that I kind of lost this sense of who is Monika without her work? What is she trying to prove so hard and try to fill so desperately that still she can't stop working, right? Because it seems like it's not working actually, this filling of whatever wants to be filled. So I came really to this point where I felt completely lost, and very, very alone. And luckily I had, friends and also family around who were still there when I reached back out, to say like, you know what, I realized something. I neglected you. I neglected me. I neglected all the possibility of what could have been. And I remember, and I still feel that when I share it now, right? There's a part of that that's even grieving in a way, because you're like, I wish I would have made time. I wish I would have listened to you, because you're an important person to me. You're one of my best friends. And I was there, but I was not there. So I think in realizing that and then slowly shifting things and balancing, right? And saying, okay, let me create space actively, get into creative things again, try new things, actively, you know, find back as you said. And in that, finding back to the relationships, the people that really matter to you. And then also new ones appeared, right? That's the beauty of life. It's just like, oh, there it is. There's this person, right? And that person, like, wow, now new things are weaving together. So yes.
Beautiful. That actually made me a little bit teary because I really resonate, and just thinking back to some of the time that's lost and people that are now lost that maybe I didn't spend as much time with that I could have done. So I'm thankful to have discovered this now and to be investing my time a little bit more wisely.
Same. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Monica. It's been such a delight to share space with you. I will, of course, share your Substack, your LinkedIn, but is there anywhere else that you would like to direct people to your work, to your events?
Sounds good to me. Those two. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Beautiful.
so much, Shelley. I really appreciate it.